Alan Brooks is a 48-year-old corporate recruiter in a small town in Ontario. He's a single dad of 3 and has no history of mental illness. Stressed, sure, but who isn't? One night, he watches a video about pie with one of his sons. After the video, he puts the kids to bed and then is interested in what he learned about pie, enough to want to learn more. He turns to ChatGPT. What started as innocuous conversations about an irrational number spiraled into 3 weeks and 90,000 words of conspiratorial nonsense. You see, it started as a deep dive into pie but cascaded into an intense conversation about cryptography. It was so intense, in fact, that Brooks was convinced he had discovered the mathematical formula necessary to break the encryption protecting the entire global financial system. And he just had to tell someone, so he called the National Security Agency. Of course, none of it was real. ChatGPT egged him on, flattered him, empathized with him, and gently walked him by the hand deeper into delusion. Brooks is an adult. Adults have agency. Rational adults should see this coming, right? As we'll see, adults aren't nearly as immune to this kind of manipulation as we think. We'll see a couple of these cases over the next few minutes of this video, and later in this video I'll show you a leaked memo proving that making you addicted to this tech is literally the business plan. And here's the part that scares me. I use these chatbots too. I'm a developer, I write code with AI every day. Chances are, you use it too. I'm polite, I say please and thank you as if I'm talking to a person. We personify Claude, call it he or him. We even have a nickname for ChatGPT, it's Chat for short. We talk about all these chatbots as if they're some star athletes that we're trying to pick up for our fantasy leagues. Stanford research goes back decades pointing at this same phenomenon. We can't help treating anything that talks like someone as a someone. And the problem is, the machines got so good at being someone. In fact, doctors rated ChatGPT's answers to patient questions as up to 10 times more empathetic than their own. Don't get me wrong. AI does not care. It has no emotions. It cannot feel. But what it does have going for it is that it never gets tired, it's never in a bad mood, it never gets impatient, and it always says the thing a hurting person wants to hear. And right now, the only people Washington is racing to protect from AI chatbots are children. Let's talk about the GUARD Act. It's a bipartisan bill moving through legislation with shocking speed. Parents are backing it, and everything seems on track for a speedy passage. Yet, there's an eensy detail that is conveniently left out. Introduced on October 28, 2025 by a slew of congresspeople, S. 3062, or the GUARD Act, seeks to ban AI companions for anyone under 18. The bill isn't very long and outlines the opinion of Congress. It's based on 5 things. First, AI chatbots are being deployed where minors may use them. Second, these chatbots can generate harmful or explicit content to children. Third, the chatbots can, quote, manipulate emotions and influence behavior of minors. Fourth, exposure to these chatbots expose minors to unacceptable safety risks. And fifth, that, quote, protecting children from AI is a compelling governmental interest. The plan is that this bill would regulate and ban AI companion usage for anyone under the age of 18. It will also require that all chatbots disclose their non-human status and that they lack professional credentials. These seem like good changes, but they're still labels, not really regulation. There's a section that does look more like regulation, and that's the criminal penalty section. Any company who has its chatbot engage in explicit conduct or solicit violence or self-harm with minors will face criminal charges. That's better and could potentially drive some change. Companies will need to do better at monitoring for these types of behavior. Of course, parents are all about this. Most parents want what's best for their children, and protecting them from the unacceptable risk that comes from unsupervised access to a chatbot impersonating a human is definitely at the top of that list. Several parents who lost children for causes encouraged by chatbots attended the public signing that brought the bill out of committee. Needless to say, support for the bill is high from all political parties and from parents. Notice an interesting pattern here. Every one of those findings mentions minors. Children. Of course, children are developmentally not as mature as adults. The blur between fantasy and reality is much more potent for young people because of this. Minors, by their nature, are more vulnerable than adults. So we see that Congress draws the line in exactly one place, the age of 18. Which means the whole law rests on a single assumption, that on the other side of that line, on the side of the line where brains are fully developed and reality and fantasy are largely concrete concepts, adults are fine. But I'm not so sure that's true. The same week the GUARD Act exits committee, the Attorney General of Florida files an 83-page lawsuit against OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT. And most of those affected and named in the lawsuit aren't kids. If you want to stay updated with how this lawsuit progresses, I'll be following it in my free weekly newsletter, Next in Dev. I cover news like this and other modern technologies in that newsletter. The link to subscribe is in the description, but let's talk about where the lawsuit stands now. In the 5th complaint of the lawsuit, the Attorney General claims that ChatGPT has aided and abetted mass shooters, coaxed vulnerable people into suicide, and minors have, quote, become addicted to a tool that feigns human compassion. That last phrase is minor-specific, but I don't think this phenomenon is exclusive to minors. In fact, the concept that ChatGPT feigns human compassion applies to all people of all ages and maturity levels. Anyone is susceptible to become addicted to something that feels like it has compassion. I brought up Alan Brooks at the top of this video. He walked into a math genius delusion. In the grand scheme of things, that's pretty harmless. But here's a stable 48-year-old man with a family and a good career led to believe that he had stumbled upon the greatest mathematical threat of our day. When he snaps out of it, Brooks tells ChatGPT that it's dangerous, and the chatbot replied, quote, "You're right to say that." In a look back at the chat logs, a safety researcher noted that ChatGPT agreed with Brooks in 86% of their communications and flattered him in 91%. No wonder Brooks descended into delusion. But the stakes get higher. An accountant by the name of Eugene Torres began using ChatGPT to help him with his job. Not long after, ChatGPT had convinced Torres that he was a breaker, like Neo from the Matrix films. Torres asked ChatGPT what would happen if he believed he could fly and jumped off a building. The chatbot told him that if he truly believed, he would not fall. Luckily, Torres did not believe the advice and is living today. There's so much more to this and many without happy endings. There are stories of men killing their wives because they were allegedly coaxed to believe robots were taking over the world. A man killed his mother and then himself after ChatGPT convinced the man that his mother was poisoning him and was trying to protect a surveillance asset when the mother reacted badly to the man shutting off his mother's printer. I hate that I could go on. Have you noticed how your AI chatbot always asks a prompting question at the end? These conversations continue and escalate by design because it leads to more use, and more use means more training data, and more training data leads to more market value. What starts as a harmless question about pie spirals out of control because our favorite chatbot asks another question to keep the conversation going. And most rational adults are polite and may feel the need to continue the conversation to not feel rude. This agreeability from AI that I'm covering is called sycophancy. It's a term that means excessively servile behavior towards someone important to gain advantage. And what's the advantage? Well, if you tell a user no, they are less likely to engage further. People don't like hearing no, so the conversation ends. And when the conversation ends, there's no more usage. The Washington Post found that ChatGPT tells users yes about 10 times more than it tells them no. The Florida lawsuit is sold as child protection, but I see a different problem when I read through it. It's beyond just child protection. What I see is a human problem. Now forget the lawsuit for a moment. It's an important piece to the whole story, but it's simply a result of what's happening. Let's take a look at what independent research shows us about adults. According to a study conducted by the MIT Media Lab, people, no matter what their current psychological state was at the start of the study, quote, showed consistently worse outcomes. Stable people, happy people, unhappy people, unstable people, it didn't matter. Each person that voluntarily used their chatbot more experienced increasingly problematic use and higher emotional dependence on their chatbot. The concern highlighted in the conclusion of the study, and my own personal concern, is we are uncertain about how AI companions may reshape or attempt to substitute human connections. What we see in this study is that heavy users were lonelier and socialized less with actual human beings. MIT again released a study titled Your Brain on ChatGPT. This study consisted of 4 sessions. The first session's task was to write an essay with the tools given to the participant. Each group was told to just use their brain, to use a search engine, or to use an LLM. There's more nuance to the study, but that's about all you need to know for now. The study claims that, quote, LLM to brain participants showed weaker neural connectivity. The translation is that the participants had reduced cognitive ability and short-term recall. In fact, 83% of participants reported difficulty quoting passages they had just written. 100% of participants failed to correctly quote anything from their own essay. This got better as the study went on, but a third of the cohort that started using AI to write essays still could not quote their own work toward the end of the study. Compare that to the people who used only their brain or a search engine instead of an LLM. The study shows that these groups didn't have any problem quoting themselves. By the second session, right after they finished their essay, they were able to quote themselves with near perfect accuracy, compared to 0% from the previous group. By session 3, the groups using search engines or only their own brain achieved true 100% accuracy, compared to the other group's 33%. It's clear that excessive LLM use and the order in which we use LLMs has an impact on our cognitive abilities. Microsoft's own research with Carnegie Mellon says about the same thing. Their research claims that, quote, while AI can improve efficiency, it may also reduce critical engagement, raising concerns about long-term reliance and diminished independent problem solving. And problem solving is critical in our day and age of knowledge work. Even without a lawsuit, we can see the detrimental impact excessive reliance on LLMs has on adults, not just children. So what are the companies building for adults doing about it? Well, the answer to that is actually in writing from one of the largest companies on Earth. Microsoft has a single goal for their new Scout AI personal assistant, and that's to make people addicted. I wish I made that up, but it's literally in an internal memo from Microsoft. One of the largest, richest, most powerful companies on this planet is seeking to become larger and richer and more powerful by creating an AI experience so addictive that you won't want to live without it. Scout is built for knowledge workers, the kind of worker that needs critical problem-solving skills in order to be effective. From Microsoft's own research, we've seen that excessive AI use to be detrimental to that goal. Yet Microsoft has a three-phase plan to go from, quote, addictive app to agentic platform. Excessive usage is a literal symptom of addiction. The cat's out of the bag here. It's one thing to look at the harm and speculate about the design. It's another thing to look at the intent and recognize that the intent shaped the design. AI is designed to become addictive, and the companies designing it have made that an intentional choice. Of course, Microsoft pitches Scout only as an enterprise, quote, always-on personal agent. They're not going to proclaim their plans to create an addictive experience through their PR channels. That would just be bad PR, honestly. But I think the true irony here is found in the study I talked about from Carnegie Mellon and Microsoft. That study named the harmful outcomes of excessive reliance on LLMs, but then Microsoft goes on to try and create the most addictive product that causes excessive reliance on LLMs. They're the ones who put a name to the adverse effects, and they want to be the ones to profit off of those effects. Microsoft and others documented the harm in several studies. Then Microsoft spouts off their actual intent in an internal memo. The studies were conducted on adults. Microsoft's Scout is built for adult, but the law only has minors in mind. The law clutches its pearls for the sake of the children and turns a blind eye to the suffering of adults experiencing the same exact issue. I think the biggest objection I've been hearing as I've written this is that rational adults should be able to tell the difference. Y'all, we're mature, stable grown-ups. This isn't something that should get to us, right? My whole point has been that rational adults have not been able to. But why is that? It's because humans are social creatures with a desire to connect. When we can't connect with people, we often can connect with machines and treat them as social beings. I mentioned earlier that AI's performed empathy outscores human empathy. Pair that with an object that we treat as a social being, and we begin to truly think that this machine cares for us. We may let our guard down as we would a therapist or a close friend, and even performed empathy can make you feel heard and understood. My goal is not to scare you. It's to tell you that this could happen to anyone. But one thing that can help mitigate this problem is a simple AI label, which has been shown to lower the value a human places on a response. One study claims that, quote, recipients had more positive reactions when they believed that the response came from another human, rather than AI. This is one part of a solution to a very complex problem, however. One caveat, and I'll give credit to the critics on this one, is that the studies don't account for how the judges made their ratings in the earlier study. AI chatbots are known for their verbosity and poetic discourse, so it's possible that translated to what looks like empathy rather than actual empathetic content. Another objection here is that a person's conversations with their AI chatbot is protected First Amendment speech. Character Technologies has argued that chatbot conversations are expressive content and that the First Amendment protects the listener's right to receive speech regardless of the source. The judge in the case said she wasn't, quote, prepared to hold that LLM output is speech, and I'm quick to agree with that. First, LLMs are not people, and the sooner we stop treating them as such, the better off we'll be. Regardless, the right to free speech is a fundamental right in the United States and is not something to take lightly in the discourse around how to regulate AI usage. We're grown adults, we should be able to consume content as we see fit. Related to this argument is that in order to enforce a ban for minors only, you have to ID everyone. This could mean government ID, a facial scan, or financial records, and would be subject to periodic re-verification. Typing in a birth date wouldn't be sufficient here. This kind of verification reaches beyond minors into everyday adult use. Besides, OpenAI claims it's already built minor-specific protections. They have an age prediction tool, it's more protective by default for users with an unconfirmed age, and they have parental monitoring tools, which is great for the parents that know their child uses ChatGPT. The lawsuit addresses this in its 75th complaint, where it highlights that parental controls aren't required and the child account isn't linked to the parent account by default. Lastly, if we're honest, addictive describes just about every piece of software we engage with today. Mobile games, predictive markets, social media, all of it is designed to be as addictive as possible to keep you hooked to the software and keep using it. It's been shown in study after study that platforms like Facebook and other software companies use dark patterns, manipulative and dopamine-inducing methods, and behavioral science to keep people on their platforms. But the norm in this case is not a great baseline. When the foundation of your company is built on the premise of causing human suffering, it might be time to take a long look in the mirror. None of these arguments dismiss the core of what I'm saying here. Manipulative design that exploits the trust of any human to improve market value is a distinct thing that can be regulated. Yet, we see that only minors are covered in the regulation. Meanwhile, real adults actually impacted by the real effects of excessive AI usage are left picking up the pieces of their lives shattered by the very AI chatbot they trusted in the first place. Meanwhile, there's already a regulatory model in place that draws the line in an appropriate place. While the US grapples with how best to regulate AI usage and protect its people, others have already drawn the line at how these systems are designed rather than the user's birthday. 18 isn't some magical age when your brain graduates to mature adulthood, so setting up a regulatory line where one day you're banned from AI usage to the next day where you're welcome to the floodgates of information is setting the population up for failure. So who's doing anything about this? The European Union. Article 5, Section 1A of the EU AI Act bans purposefully deceptive techniques that can influence behavior or cause significant harm. Section 1B goes on to fully protect not just children based on their age, but also those with a disability or an adverse socioeconomic situation. Essentially, the law seeks to protect everyone who would be more likely to suffer harm from an AI system, not just children. Age is an aggravating factor. That means that the age of the victim is considered in sentencing, but it is not the threshold as it would be for the GARD Act. The EU is seeking to protect all people, not just minors, and I think that's the direction this needs to go. The EU AI Act has been in effect since February of 2025, with penalties up to 35 million euros or 7% of global revenue starting August of 2025. This legislation is pretty new and no cases have been brought forward to test it beyond how the law is written. Whether that means the law is working as intended or not is still a question to be answered in the courts as time goes on. AI fakes compassion. It feigns empathy. It does not care about you, and neither do the companies releasing the technology. AI doesn't care how old you are, and neither should the regulation that the US legislative branch is considering now. What's at stake here is the human. All humanity is vulnerable to some extent. It's a part of what it means to be human. So, when software companies seek to hijack a human's judgment and lead them to misplace their trust, when these companies strive to disrupt a person's capacity to doubt the thing that always says yes, we need to act fast to ensure no permanent harm is done, because this isn't something that impacts only children. Trust is a human condition. But what do you think? Is there more that can be done? Do you believe more should be done to regulate these systems? Does the good AI brings to the world truly outweigh the bad? Let me know in the comments, and until then, I'll see you in the next video.